Right, we're down to page number 28, so we're nearly at the end. We've got a little bit of hatching to do, and we're going to hatch these things first. Now, these are not arrayed anymore. We had to break the array to get rid of that one and to trim this out. So we will just hatch the things individually. And there's a couple of ways of getting the hatch dialog box up. It's a context ribbon, really. So there's this one, hatch. That will do it, and you get this hatch creation ribbon as opposed to the hatch editor ribbon, which is nearly the same but not quite. Alternatively, you can type in H on the keyboard and that will get you to the same place. Now we are going to use pick points, so choose the type of hatch you want. If we want to expand this down, we get all sorts of different hatch patterns and gradient patterns. We'll pick solid. And we could select the objects, but we'll just use the pick inside. So again, you get a preview of what it looks like. And when we create this hatch by clicking inside each of these things, like so, and then hit enter, that's created individual. It has created the hatch. Let's see whether it's pick the hatch. No, it's created a hatch which is kind of centered there, but what it's done is added all these boundaries up together. It's not created individual ones of that because we picked individually, which makes sense because obviously you're hatching certain objects, you might want to have them grouped. If you don't want these hatches grouped, then the way to ungroup them is, now I don't know whether they've, I'm just looking around because I know what it is, but I'm just seeing whether they've actually created anything else. Under options, separate hatches, there it is. It's either under the flyout of options, or you can click this tiny little arrow, another one of those hatch setting or setting things specific to certain things, and this gives you the old style hatch dialog box. This is what it used to look like. Okay, so all sorts of different things which are now contained within the ribbon. So the separate hatches is there. Associative means that when you move the shape of the object, the hatch will follow it, so that's quite useful. So if you want to click on separate hatches and then OK, now we've got individual hatches for each of these things. Okay, so that's saying that you would want to do that. You might not want to do that, but anyway, that's the way in which you can break these up. The other hatch pattern that we want to put in is in this area, and we'll call it up, and it's ANSI 31, and we'll click there. And this hatch is too big at the moment, so if we just go to the scale and we can click down, if that'll take forever clicking that because we're going to get to 0.5, so we'll just type in 0.5, enter, and that's going to change that hatch pattern to 0.5, and then we can hit escape, and that's set that. And that's pretty much it. The last bit that we discuss is printing from model space. Now later on we'll look at printing in paper space, but if you want to print something to scale in model space, for example, then you can do that, but bearing in mind everything's drawn at full size. Now this watch thing, which isn't really a watch, I mean in reality the strap would be kind of up there, because if you actually wore this, 12 o'clock would be facing the wrong direction. The strap would normally go from 12 to 6, not from 3 to 9. Okay, so it's not a very good example of a watch, but it's just an example of how to use certain drawing conventions within inside of AutoCAD. But say you wanted to print this out on a piece of paper, then we can do that. We would go first of all to the page setup. Now to get page setup on this, if we type PAG, that brings up Page Setup Manager, and it says there model space. Another way to do it would be to go to the big red A, which is the application menu, and print, and go to Page Setup. That's another way to get there. I don't think we get the layout option on there. I'm pretty sure that Page Setup might be somewhere else on this, but let's use this option instead. So Page Setup Manager, and then we modify. and we need to choose a printer. Now if you want to print in the university, then you choose one of the university printers. I'm working at home, so I'm going to use my Adobe PDF. Alternatively, DWG to PDF would do the same thing, so I'll use that one instead. And depending on whether you had colored lines and you wanted them to be black and white, then monochrome would be a plot style of choice. This style changes all colored lines to black and normally then prints out on white. So I'll say yes to that, and display plot styles. These are just sort of general settings that you're probably best to get into the habit of doing. We've got no transparency, so we don't want to do that. Now, plot scale, we don't want it to fit to paper, because if we set our A4 paper, then it's going to make it at a scale of 1 to 2.393 units, so that's no good. So if you wanted this to be full size, then we would change that from 1 to 1 millimeters. And we've also got the watt to plot bit. Okay, so what we want to do is not necessarily plot the display, but we want a window around the objects, and then we can center those on the drawing. I mean, it would kind of work similarly if we said plot display, because the whole thing is sitting on the display at the moment, but it's much better if we kind of draw a window around the sort of extents. The extents of this aren't the extents of the objects, they're the extents of the drawings, and these are set to probably A4 at the moment, but that's something else we need to discuss maybe later on. But we'll create a window, and we'll kind of go, if we track along and track up from there, so that's going to be the extents of our window. Just go a little bit further over, and then we'll come down a little way further, so we try to get it balanced. Click there, and then we can see that that's sitting at that part of our drawing. This is representing our piece of paper. If we click center the plot, that's going to move it up there. If you see any red lines, it means that it's spreading beyond the printable area of the drawing. So that's quite a good little visual feedback of what's going on. So 1 to 1, everything's fine, and drawing orientation, landscape. It doesn't change the shape of that, but it changes the way everything looks. And then we can preview that. And this is how it would look. So we've got no border or anything else on it. We're just getting a printout of this to see what it looks like. And we can right click and exit, and then we can say OK. And what that does is just sets up our page. It doesn't print it yet, so we can go close for that. Now this is just set up our print basically. So if I now go to the print or the plot, then all our settings are set. And if I go to preview, it's going to show us exactly what our plot page setup looked like. Okay, you don't have to necessarily do the page setup, but it does help if you want to sort of get this set up for use more than once. Once you're happy with the way it looks, you can right click and plot, and that'll create a PDF. Okay, now if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to do it. This thing is more of an exercise than anything else, so it's not part of the portfolio, so we don't necessarily need to print this out, but if you do want to print it out to see what it looks like and see the quality of the line, then by all means do so. The next thing that we'll be looking at, which is the Phaco watch, that is part of the portfolio. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed understanding a little bit more about AutoCAD, and hopefully we'll be able to crack on and do some great stuff in the near future.